Hello there, welcome to Beyond the Fur. I always imagine that line being read in a soft, cozy voice, like we're settling in for a chat with a hot cup of cocoa. So, hey, pull up a chair. Tonight we're going to wander into one of the coldest, wildest, and most fascinating corners of the planet, the Arctic. And since the thumbnail already spoiled us with polar bears, penguins, and walruses, we might as well start with the big boss up north, the polar bear. Now, let me throw you into a picture. Imagine standing on an endless sheet of white ice that seems to stretch out forever. The wind is sharp enough to sting your cheeks, and you can hear the faint creaks of the ice shifting under its own weight. And then, off in the distance, there's this enormous white figure walking with a slow, deliberate swagger. That, my friend, is the king of the Arctic, the polar bear. Polar bears aren't just big, they are massive. We're talking about males that can weigh over 1,500 pounds, sometimes tipping closer to 1,700 if food's been good. To put that into perspective, that's like having a small car slowly ambling toward you on four legs. Females are smaller, usually around 600 pounds, but don't let that fool you. Arctic moms are as tough as they come. But here's the twist: despite being these hulking giants, polar bears aren't technically white. I know, sounds crazy, right? But their fur is actually transparent. Each hair is like a hollow tube, letting light bounce around inside it, which makes them look white in the snow. And underneath all that? Jet black skin. That black skin acts like a solar panel, soaking up every shred of warmth from the sun, which, let's be real, is a survival hack when you live where temperatures can drop to -40. And get this, polar bears are technically marine mammals. Yup, they're more closely tied to whales and seals than to, say, grizzly bears. Why? Because they depend entirely on the ocean to survive. Their main menu item, seals. Especially the ringed seal, which is like the fast food combo meal of the Arctic. Polar bears will patiently wait by a seal's breathing hole in the ice, sometimes for hours, even days, until the seal pops up for air. Then, bam! Dinner is served. It's not flashy hunting, but it works. Speaking of patience, let me tell you about their swimming abilities. These guys aren't just casual paddlers. They can swim for days at a time. One polar bear was recorded swimming over 220 miles without stopping. Can you imagine? I complain if my arms get tired after 10 laps in a pool. But polar bears, they'll just keep going, navigating between ice floes, looking for food, sometimes with their cubs clinging on behind them. But it's not all raw power and endurance. Polar bears also have this almost soft, family-driven side, especially mothers with cubs. A polar bear mom usually gives birth to 2 cubs, though sometimes it's just 1, and very rarely 3. They're born in the dead of winter, inside a snow den that the mother digs into a drift. Picture it: outside the world is frozen solid, storms raging, ice cracking, and yet inside this den, 2 tiny, blind cubs are curled up against their mom's warmth. They weigh less than a loaf of bread when they're born. It's incredible that those little squeakers can grow into 1,000-pound hunters in just a few years. Here's something you might not know: the Inuit people have over a dozen different names for the polar bear, each reflecting some aspect of its power or behavior. One of my favorites is Nanak, which means the animal worthy of great respect. And that feels right. To the people who have lived alongside them for centuries, polar bears aren't just wildlife, they're part of the culture, part of the stories passed down from generation to generation. Of course, it wouldn't be honest if I didn't mention the challenges polar bears face today. The Arctic is warming faster than almost anywhere else on Earth, and that shrinking sea ice is like pulling the rug out from under them. No ice means no seal hunting platforms, and no seal hunting means empty stomachs. Scientists have already noticed bears getting thinner, traveling longer distances, and spending more time on land where food is scarce. It's tough to think about, because in so many ways polar bears are like a living emblem of the Arctic itself, strong, majestic, but also fragile if the environment around them collapses. Now, before we get too gloomy, let's lighten the mood with a quirky fact. Polar bears have a sense of smell so powerful that they can detect a seal nearly a mile away, even if it's under 3 feet of solid ice. Imagine smelling a pizza from 10 blocks away and then digging through the pavement to get it. That's the level we're talking about. And here's one of my favorite bits of trivia. Polar bear paws are enormous, about the size of a dinner plate, sometimes 12 inches across. Those giant paws spread out their weight so they don't sink into the snow, kind of like natural snowshoes. And they're also covered in little bumps and fur, giving them traction on the slippery ice. Basically, they're wearing built-in winter boots. Now, since our thumbnail teased penguins, I know some of you might be wondering, wait, do penguins and polar bears ever bump into each other? The short answer, nope. Polar bears live in the Arctic, penguins live in the Antarctic. They're literal polar opposites. The only time they've met is in cartoons or people's imaginations. If they did meet, though, well, let's just say the penguins wouldn't stand a chance. But that's the fun part of this series. We get to wander around both poles and beyond, exploring not just polar bears, but walruses, penguins, Arctic foxes, narwhals, and all the rest of this wild cast of characters. Tonight was just the opening scene, setting the stage with the Arctic's most famous face. So, as we sip the last of our imaginary cocoa, here's the takeaway. Polar bears aren't just giant fluffy mascots of the North. They're survivors, travelers, hunters, mothers, and symbols. They carry entire cultures' worth of stories on their shoulders, and they remind us of how intertwined life and environment really are. Alright, that's section 1. Next time, we'll slide over to one of their tusked neighbors who knows how to nap like a champion, the walrus. Picture this: you're lying on a cold stretch of Arctic shoreline, bundled up against the wind. The air smells like salt and seaweed, the waves are slapping against chunks of ice, and then, out of nowhere, you hear it. A loud, almost comical "OF!" followed by a series of grunts and bellows. Suddenly, you realize you're not alone. A whole herd of giant, blubbery walruses is hauling itself up onto the beach, flopping around like oversized beanbags with tusks. Walruses are one of those animals that don't look like they should exist outside of a children's storybook. They've got whiskers like an old man, skin like wrinkled leather, and tusks that can stretch up to 3 feet long. And yet, somehow, they're not just survivors in this harsh climate, they're masters of it. First things first, those tusks. They're probably the most recognizable thing about a walrus, and people often assume they're used like weapons. And sure, sometimes they are. Walruses will spar with each other, especially males during mating season, clashing like armored knights in slow motion. But most of the time, the tusks have a far less violent job. They act like ice picks. Walruses use them to haul their huge bodies out of the water and onto ice floes. Imagine trying to get out of a swimming pool without using the ladder. That's basically what walruses are doing, except they're over a ton in weight. And yeah, I meant that literally. A big male walrus can weigh up to 4,000 pounds. That's about the same as a small car. Females are a bit smaller, around 2,000 pounds, but still absolute units. You'd think that carrying that much weight around would slow them down, but don't be fooled. Walruses are surprisingly agile in the water. They can dive as deep as 300 feet to search for food, holding their breath for up to half an hour at a time. Speaking of food, walruses are not picky eaters, but they have a very particular way of dining. Their favorite meal? Clams. Lots and lots of clams. When a walrus finds a bed of clams on the seafloor, it uses its sensitive whiskers, called vibrissae, to detect them in the sand. Then it does something wild. Instead of chewing, a walrus creates a powerful vacuum with its mouth, literally sucking the clam right out of its shell like a kid slurping a milkshake. Scientists have even described it as one of the strongest suction forces in the animal kingdom. So yeah, if you ever wondered what a 3,000-pound clam vacuum looks like, now you know. But here's the part one love: walruses are social creatures. They're rarely alone. In fact, they prefer to be in herds that can number in the thousands. When they're packed together on land or ice, it's like the world's loudest, smelliest sleepover. They pile on top of each other, snorting, grunting, and occasionally bonking tusks when someone gets too pushy. Scientists believe this close physical contact actually helps them regulate body temperature, and stay warm. And despite their sometimes intimidating looks, walruses are, for the most part, gentle giants. Sure, males can get feisty during mating season, but outside of that, they're more about community than conflict. Inuit cultures have long respected them, not only as a source of food and materials, but also as a symbol of abundance and resilience. Every part of the walrus was traditionally used: meat for food, tusks for tools or art, and skin for rope. Nothing went to waste. Now, let's talk about something fun: walrus sounds. If polar bears are silent stalkers, walruses are the noisy neighbors blasting music at all hours. They make this incredible range of vocalizations, from bell-like knocks to whistles and growls. Males even use their vocal abilities to attract mates, producing sounds underwater that can travel long distances. It's kind of like their own version of karaoke night, except instead of Sweet Caroline, it's more like deep, echoing bellows vibrating through the Arctic Sea. And here's a quirky fact for you: walruses can actually walk on land using all four flippers. This sets them apart from true seals, which kind of flop and wriggle awkwardly when they're out of the water. Walruses, on the other hand, can support their body weight on their front flippers and move around a little more confidently. Still, I wouldn't call it graceful. It's more like watching a beanbag with legs try to strut across the beach. Of course, life for walruses isn't all clams and cuddle piles. They too face the challenges of a changing Arctic. As sea ice retreats, walruses are forced to haul out on land in massive numbers, sometimes leading to dangerous stampedes where younger calves can be crushed. It's heartbreaking, because these animals have thrived for millennia by balancing perfectly between land and ice, and now that balance is tipping. But even in the face of that, walruses continue to fascinate us. They've inspired legends, art, and even nonsense poetry. Lewis Carroll's The Walrus and the Carpenter might ring a bell. And I think it's because walruses are such contradictions: clumsy yet graceful, intimidating yet gentle, absurd-looking yet perfectly adapted to their world. If you've ever seen one up close, maybe at an aquarium or in a documentary, you'll know they have this almost goofy charm to them. Those long whiskers twitch when they sniff around, their little eyes seem to twinkle, and if they could talk, I feel like they'd be that funny uncle at the family reunion: big, loud, a little embarrassing, but ultimately lovable. So, next time you picture the Arctic, don't just think of polar bears pacing across the ice. Remember the walrus, too, a creature that can dive deep, sing loudly, eat clams like a pro, and still find time to flop into a giant nap pile with its friends. Alright, that's our tusked giant for tonight. Up next, we'll wander into the snowy tundra and meet one of the most adaptable survivors of all time, the Arctic fox. Close your eyes for a second and picture this: a vast, snowy tundra under a sky painted with northern lights. It looks empty, silent, almost too still. Then, out of the corner of your eye, something small and quick moves, almost blending into the snow itself. A little white puffball with sharp ears and a bushy tail, trotting across the ice like it owns the place. That's the Arctic fox, and don't let the cuteness fool you. This animal is one of the toughest survivalists on the planet. Now, the first thing you notice about an Arctic fox is its fur. In winter, it's pure white, like a snowflake come to life, giving it the perfect camouflage against predators and prey alike. But come summer, the coat changes to a brown or grayish color to match the rocks and tundra. Think of it like nature's version of switching outfits with the season. This ability to disappear into the landscape is one of the fox's greatest tools for survival. And that coat isn't just stylish, it's practical. Arctic foxes have some of the warmest fur in the animal kingdom. They can survive in temperatures as low as -70 degrees Celsius, -94 degrees Fahrenheit without shivering. Let that sink in. Most of us can't handle walking from the car to the front door in winter without complaining, but Arctic foxes thrive in cold that would freeze us solid in minutes. Their bodies are built like little heat-conserving machines. Short ears, stubby legs, and a compact nose, all designed to minimize heat loss. And that tail? It's basically a built-in blanket. When the wind howls and snow starts to fall, the fox curls up into a tight ball, wrapping that fluffy tail over its face like a scarf. instant sleeping bag. But here's where things get fascinating. Arctic foxes are survivors not because they're the strongest hunters, but because they're the most resourceful. They eat anything. Lemmings are their favorite meal, and in good years, a fox might eat thousands of them. But when food is scarce, they switch gears. Fish, birds, berries, carrion, if it's edible, it's fair game. They'll even scavenge leftovers from polar bear kills. Scientists have watched foxes follow polar bears across the ice, almost like sidekicks, waiting for scraps. It's risky business, but hey, free food is free food. And get this, Arctic foxes have this quirky behavior of caching food. That means they bury extra food in the ground, almost like they're stockpiling for a rainy day, or more accurately, a blizzard. Some foxes have been found with dozens of little food stashes spread across their territory. It's like having mini freezers hidden all over the tundra. Now, here's one of my favorite Arctic fox facts. They're incredible travelers. In 2018, researchers tracked a young female fox that made an unbelievable journey. She walked from Norway's Svalbard Islands all the way to northern Canada. That's more than 2,000 miles in just 76 days. Imagine walking across an entire continent, alone, through nothing but ice and snow. She averaged about 28 miles a day. That's like running a marathon every single day for 2.5 months. This little fox basically broke the record for Arctic wanderlust. And yet, despite their toughness, Arctic foxes also have this almost playful side. If you've ever seen a video of one hunting under the snow, it's hard not to smile. They'll cock their head, listen intently, then suddenly leap high into the air and dive nose first into the snow, hoping to pin down a hidden lemming or vole. It's like watching a child play a game, except it's literally life or death for them. Culturally, Arctic foxes have always held a place in mythology and folklore. In Inuit stories, they're often portrayed as clever tricksters, small but wily, outsmarting bigger animals or even humans. Some legends say the fox's fur was painted white by the snow spirits themselves, as a reward for its cunning. In Norse mythology, there's even the belief that the northern lights are caused by foxes running across the sky, their tails scattering sparks of light. Isn't that beautiful? That an animal so small could inspire something as grand as the aurora borealis. But like so many Arctic animals, foxes face their own modern struggles. Their survival is closely tied to the population of lemmings, which naturally rises and falls in cycles. When lemmings are plentiful, foxes thrive. But when the numbers crash, foxes can starve, especially in areas where human activity has reduced alternative food sources. Add climate change on top of that, melting sea ice, shifting ecosystems, and the fox's world gets smaller and harder to navigate. Still, Arctic foxes are fighters. They've adapted for thousands of years to one of the harshest places on Earth, and if any small creature stands a chance of riding out the storms ahead, it's them. Now let me throw in one last fun fact to make you smile before we wrap this section. Arctic foxes mate for life. That's right, these little survivors are also romantics at heart. A pair will raise their pups together, sometimes up to a dozen at once, in elaborate dens that can stretch for hundreds of feet underground. Some dens are so old and so well used that they've been passed down through fox families for generations, centuries, even. It's like a cozy little underground mansion, filled with the laughter of fox kids tumbling around. So, next time you think of the Arctic, don't just picture the hulking polar bear or the tusked walrus. Picture the fox, too, trotting across the snow, nose to the wind, tail curled against the cold. A small, clever survivor who proves that sometimes, toughness comes in the fluffiest of packages. Alright, that's our story for tonight about the Arctic's trickster and survivor. Up next, we're diving back into the icy waters to meet the ocean's most mysterious unicorn, the narwhal. If the Arctic were a fantasy novel, the narwhal would be its plot twist. You're out on a ship, drifting between sheets of drifting ice, the water so still it looks like glass. Suddenly, the surface breaks, and up rises a sleek, spotted whale with a spiral tusk jutting straight out of its head. It looks like something from a medieval tapestry, but it's real. That's the narwhal, one of the most mysterious and enchanting creatures in the ocean. Let's start with the obvious, that tusk. People have been fascinated by it for centuries. Medieval Europeans believed narwhal tusks were the horns of unicorns, sold for outrageous sums of money as magical objects said to detect poison or cure disease. Royalty would drink from cups supposedly made of unicorn horn, when in reality, they were made from narwhal tusk. So, in a way, narwhals were the unicorns of the old world, just with a lot more seawater involved. Now, here's the truth. The tusk is actually an elongated tooth. Specifically, it's one of the narwhal's two upper canine teeth that grows through the lip and twists into that beautiful spiral shape. Most tusks grow about 6 to 9 feet long, but the record is nearly 10 feet. Imagine carrying a sword longer than your body, attached to your face, every single day. That's the narwhal life. But the tusk isn't just a random decoration, it's a sensory organ. Scientists have discovered it's packed with millions of nerve endings, allowing narwhals to sense changes in the water, like temperature, pressure, and salinity. In other words, that unicorn horn is basically a high-tech antenna, helping the narwhal navigate and maybe even communicate. Some males are even seen crossing tusks in what looks like gentle fencing, possibly as a way to establish dominance or strengthen social bonds. It's less of a sword fight and more of a polite handshake with face swords. Now let's talk about their world. Narwhals live year-round in the Arctic waters of Canada, Greenland, Norway, and Russia. They don't migrate south when winter comes, they stay put, even when the ocean freezes over. To survive, they use cracks in the ice to breathe, and they've been spotted squeezing through holes barely bigger than their bodies. Think of it like holding your breath while trying to wiggle through a tight doorway just to get a gulp of air. Diet-wise, narwhals are picky but efficient. They love Arctic cod, halibut, squid, and shrimp. Instead of chasing prey with speed like dolphins, narwhals use echolocation, sending out clicks and listening for echoes bouncing back, to hunt in the pitch-black waters beneath the ice. They can dive as deep as 5,000 feet and stay underwater for up to 25 minutes. That's deeper than almost any other whale, except the sperm whale. Imagine diving down a mile into freezing darkness, navigating by sound alone, and coming back up with dinner. That's just another Tuesday for a narwhal. Socially, narwhals are family-oriented. They travel in pods of about 10 to 20, but sometimes you'll find gatherings of hundreds, even thousands. Picture that, a whole sea filled with unicorn whales surfacing together, tusks glinting in the cold light. It must be one of the most magical sights in the natural world. Culturally, narwhals have played an important role in Inuit life for thousands of years. They're hunted sustainably for food, and their tusks and skin, which is rich in vitamin C, have been valuable resources. Inuit legends often describe narwhals as gifts from the spirits, mysterious beings that carry secrets of the sea. And here's a little fun twist for you: not all narwhals have tusks. In fact, females usually don't, though some do grow smaller ones. And occasionally, a male will grow 2 tusks if both canine teeth erupt, a true double unicorn. Rare, but it happens. Of course, narwhals also face modern challenges. Climate change is reshaping their icy home. As sea ice melts, ship traffic increases, bringing noise pollution that disrupts their echolocation. Warmer waters also change the distribution of the fish they rely on. Narwhals are incredibly specialized. They've evolved to thrive in a very specific environment, and when that environment changes too quickly, it can spell trouble. But I don't want to leave you with just the doom and gloom. Instead, let's zoom in on just how beautifully strange these creatures are. A whale with a unicorn horn, diving deeper than submarines, living in frozen oceans most of us will never see. The fact that they exist at all feels like proof that the world still holds secrets, still has magic left if you know where to look. And here's the kicker: narwhals don't survive in captivity. Aquariums have tried, but every attempt has failed. That means the only way to experience them is in the wild, on their own terms. They are, quite literally, untamable. Which feels right. I mean, would you really want to see a unicorn behind glass? So, the next time someone tells you unicorns aren't real, you can smile and say, well, actually they are. They just happen to live under the ice in the Arctic, and they go by the name narwhal. Alright, That's our Arctic unicorn for tonight. Next time, we'll switch gears and look up into the skies, where a ghostly white bird watches over the tundra, the snowy owl. Imagine this, the Arctic tundra, endless white stretching out to the horizon. The wind is low, the silence heavy. Suddenly, something stirs, a flash of white wings cutting through the air, silent as a whisper. Bright yellow eyes lock on to the ground below, and in one swift dive, a snowy owl strikes. In that moment, the stillness of the tundra belongs to them. Snowy owls are one of those animals that feel both real and otherworldly at the same time. Their pure white feathers make them look like spirits drifting across the snow, especially when you see one perched alone on a mound in the middle of nowhere. But don't let their angelic looks fool you. These birds are stone-cold hunters. Let's talk size first. Snowy owls are among the largest owls in the world. Females, who are bigger than males, can stretch their wings up to 5 feet across. Picture that for a second, 5 feet of feathered power, swooping down silently over the Arctic. And they need that size, because their main prey is small mammals, especially lemmings. And when I say they eat lemmings, I mean they really eat lemmings. A single snowy owl can devour more than 1,600 lemmings in a year. That's like a personal buffet, one squeaky rodent at a time. During nesting season, when a mother owl is raising chicks, she and her mate may catch dozens a day. Lemmings are the currency of survival in the tundra, and snowy owls are master economists. They know exactly where to spend their energy to get the most return. Here's a fun quirk. Unlike many other owls, snowy owls are not just creatures of the night. In the land of the midnight sun, where daylight can last 24 hours, these birds are perfectly happy hunting during the day. Their keen eyesight works just as well in broad daylight as it does in twilight. It's part of what makes them so adaptable. And speaking of adaptability, snowy owls are travelers. While they nest in the Arctic, some migrate south in winter, sometimes showing up in places you'd never expect: New England beaches, Canadian prairies, even airports. In fact, airports are almost like magnets for snowy owls, probably because the wide open runways look a lot like tundra. Picture an owl sitting on a runway light, casually watching planes take off. That's happened more than once. Culturally, snowy owls have captured human imagination for centuries. In Inuit tradition, they appear in stories as wise watchers and messengers, often bridging the natural and spiritual worlds. More recently, pop culture gave them a fresh wave of fame. Remember Hedwig from Harry Potter? That snowy owl turned an entire generation into owl fans overnight. But the real bird is even more impressive than the movie version. Let's zoom in on their feathers for a moment. Each feather is designed not just for insulation, but for stealth. Snowy owls, like all owls, have special feather edges that break up air turbulence, letting them fly without making a sound. Imagine being a lemming, nibbling on a blade of tundra grass, completely unaware that death is gliding toward you on silent wings. By the time you notice, it's already too late. But snowy owls aren't just ruthless hunters, they're also dedicated parents. When it's time to nest, the female picks a high, dry spot with good visibility and scrapes out a simple nest in the ground. No trees in the tundra, so ground nesting is the only option. She'll lay a clutch of eggs, sometimes as many as 10 if food is abundant. The male brings food to the nest, and together they defend their chicks fiercely. I'm talking dive-bombing caribou, attacking foxes, even harassing humans who wander too close. Nobody messes with an owl mom. Here's a detail that always fascinates me: snowy owl populations are closely tied to lemming cycles. In years when lemmings are plentiful, owls thrive, raising big broods of chicks. But when lemmings crash, so do owl numbers. It's a boom and bust rhythm that's been pulsing through the Arctic for centuries. It reminds us that no matter how majestic these birds look, they're still part of a fragile food web. And yes, climate change is knocking at their door too. As warming alters lemming populations and shifts snow patterns, snowy owls may find their carefully balanced system wobbling. They're resilient, but even resilience has limits. Still, snowy owls hold on to their magic. If you've ever been lucky enough to see one in the wild, you'll never forget it. They don't just appear, they command the landscape. They sit, patient and regal, scanning the tundra with those piercing yellow eyes. There's something ancient in their stare, like they know secrets you'll never be privy to. And maybe that's what makes them so captivating. They're not just birds. They're reminders that even in the harshest environments, beauty thrives. That wisdom and power can come wrapped in feathers, with talons sharp enough to grip life from the snow. So, the next time you look up at a pale sky and see a shadow drifting across, think of the snowy owl, a ghost of the Arctic, silent, watchful, and endlessly fascinating. Alright, that's our feathered hunter for today. Next up, we'll come down from the skies and join a creature that marches across the tundra in massive herds, the caribou, or as some call them, reindeer. Picture the Arctic tundra again, but this time it's not silent. The ground is shaking, the air alive with grunts, snorts, and the rhythmic pounding of hooves. Stretching across the horizon, thousands of caribou move as one, like a living river flowing over the land. This is one of nature's greatest spectacles, an animal migration so vast it feels almost prehistoric. Caribou are, without a doubt, one of the most iconic animals of the Arctic. And yes, let's clear this up right away, caribou and reindeer are the same species, Rangifer tarandus. The name depends on where you are. In North America, they're called caribou, while in Europe and Asia, especially in places like Scandinavia and Siberia, they're known as reindeer. Same animal, different cultural context. Now, here's the kicker. While Santa's sleigh team might have given reindeer their festive fame, the real-life version is even more impressive. These animals are built for endurance. They're the marathon runners of the animal kingdom. Some herds migrate over 3,000 miles a year, the longest documented migration of any land mammal. That's like walking from New York to Los Angeles and then some, every single year. Why so much traveling? Food. The Arctic doesn't exactly hand out easy meals. Caribou need to move constantly to find enough lichen, grasses, and shrubs to fuel their enormous herds. They follow ancient routes, passed down through generations, trekking from winter forests to summer calving grounds on the tundra. And they do it together, in groups that can number in the hundreds of thousands. Imagine standing in the middle of that herd, surrounded by antlers as far as the eye can see. Speaking of antlers, caribou are the only members of the deer family where both males and females grow them. That's unusual. Most deer species reserve antlers for the guys. For caribou, antlers are tools for survival. Males use them to fight during the fall rut, clashing like medieval knights. Females, on the other hand, keep theirs through the winter, using them to dig through snow to reach lichen. Fun twist, that means Santa's sleigh team? If they've still got antlers in December, they're most likely female reindeer. So Rudolph? Probably a girl. And oh, let's talk about those hooves. Caribou have what I like to call the Arctic's version of snowshoes. Their hooves are wide and splayed, perfect for walking on snow without sinking too deeply. In summer, when the ground turns soggy with melted ice, those same hooves become paddles, helping them swim. And they are excellent swimmers. Whole herds can cross rivers and even lakes during migration, their antlers sticking up like sails above the water. Here's a wild fact. Caribou can see ultraviolet light. To us humans, snow looks like one big sheet of white. To caribou, it's like switching on a black light at a rave, suddenly details pop. They can spot lichen glowing against the snow, or notice the contrast of a wolf lurking nearby. It's a survival superpower, honed for life in the most extreme environment. Culturally, caribou have been woven into Arctic human life for thousands of years. For indigenous peoples like the Inuit, Sami, and Chukchi, caribou are more than animals, they're life itself. Food, clothing, shelter, tools, all of it came from the caribou. Even today, in parts of Scandinavia and Russia, reindeer herding is a way of life, with families moving alongside their herds just as their ancestors did. But the story of caribou isn't just one of resilience, it's also one of fragility. Climate change is shifting snow and ice patterns, making migrations harder. Industrial development carves up their ancient routes with roads and pipelines. Some herds that once numbered in the hundreds of thousands have declined dramatically. It's a sobering reminder that even the most enduring migrations can falter when their path is blocked. Still, caribou remain symbols of wild freedom. Watching a herd move is like watching the heartbeat of the Arctic itself. They embody endurance, community, and the idea that survival isn't just about standing still, it's about adapting, moving, and carrying forward what came before. And honestly, there's something deeply humbling about them. You realize that these animals are doing something that connects today's tundra to the Ice Age. Long before humans built cities, before Santa's sleigh jokes, caribou were walking these paths, their hooves carving history into frozen ground. So, whether you picture them as Santa's magical helpers or as the untamed herds sweeping across the Arctic wilderness, caribou remind us of one thing: survival isn't just about strength, it's about movement, resilience, and knowing when to push forward. Alright, herds, moving on. Next up in Section 7, we'll dip back into the icy waters and meet an animal with a smile that's won over the internet: beluga whales, the canaries of the sea. Imagine you're standing on the rocky edge of the Arctic Ocean. The water is calm, gray, and cold enough to freeze your bones in minutes. Suddenly, a small white shape rolls to the surface. Then another. And then a whole group of them, sleek and smooth, gleaming like polished ivory under the pale sun. They puff out misty breaths and make noises that sound like chirps, whistles, and even laughter. Congratulations, you've just met beluga whales. Belugas are unlike any other whale out there. For starters, they're small compared to giants like blue whales or humpbacks, maxing out at about 15 feet long. But what they lack in size, they make up for in personality. These animals are curious, social, and yes, downright talkative. Scientists didn't nickname them the canaries of the sea for nothing. Belugas produce an incredible variety of sounds, over 50 different calls, ranging from high-pitched whistles to clicks, squawks, and even sounds that honestly just sound like human laughter. And they don't just use these sounds to chat with each other. Their calls also serve as echolocation, bouncing off ice, fish, and other objects to help them navigate the often dark, murky waters of the Arctic. Imagine living in a world where sound is your map. Belugas are basically living sonar machines. One of the coolest things about belugas is their appearance. Unlike most whales, which are born dark and stay dark, belugas are born gray. Over time, their skin fades until they become pure white, like little Arctic ghosts swimming through the waves. This white coat helps them blend in with the ice, a handy camouflage trick when predators like polar bears or killer whales are around. And here's another quirky detail: that strange, bulbous forehead they've got? That's called a melon. And it's not just for looks. The melon is a flexible, fatty organ that belugas can actually change shape. They squish and move it around to focus their echolocation clicks, kind of like adjusting a camera lens. Scientists say it's one of the most advanced natural sonar systems in the animal kingdom. Belugas are also incredibly social creatures. Unlike solitary whales, they live in pods, tight-knit family groups that can number anywhere from a handful to hundreds. During the summer months, when rivers flow into the Arctic Ocean, belugas gather in huge groups at estuaries. Picture hundreds of white whales rolling and splashing around in shallow water, rubbing against gravel beds to help shed old skin. It looks like a whale spa day. Culturally, belugas have a long relationship with humans. Indigenous peoples in the Arctic, like the Inuit, have relied on them for centuries for food, tools, and oil. But it wasn't just about survival. The beluga also features in songs, legends, and oral histories, often celebrated for its intelligence and almost playful nature. In fact, belugas are so curious about humans that even today, wild pods sometimes approach boats or follow people along the shoreline, as if they're checking out what we're up to. Now, here's a jaw-dropper: belugas can swim backwards. Most whales? Nope. Not happening. But belugas have unusually flexible neck vertebrae, which gives them a range of motion that looks more like a dolphin or a seal. They can nod, turn their heads, and wiggle in ways that most whales simply can't. That flexibility makes them nimble hunters, chasing fish through ice cracks and shallow waters. But as playful and hardy as they are, belugas face some big challenges today. Their Arctic world is changing fast. Shrinking ice alters their migration routes, while increased shipping traffic fills their quiet world with noise pollution that messes with their ability to communicate and navigate. They're resilient, but sound is everything to a beluga. Take away their ability to hear clearly, and you take away a piece of their survival toolkit. Still, belugas hold on to their charm. Spend time with them, and you get the sense they're not just animals, they're personalities. Some scientists who've studied them for years even say belugas have unique voices, almost like names, that other whales recognize. Imagine a pod where everyone knows your voice in a crowd of hundreds. That's how tuned in these creatures are. And if you want a fun, slightly silly fact, belugas are sometimes called sea canaries, but also sea melons, because of that forehead. And in aquariums, back when it was common to keep them, people noticed they could mimic human sounds. Yep, some belugas have talked back to trainers, imitating the pitch and rhythm of human speech. Not words exactly, but close enough to give you goosebumps. So the next time you hear someone humming or whistling absent-mindedly, picture a beluga pod under the ice, doing the same thing but with whistles that can carry for miles. They remind us that the ocean isn't silent. It's full of voices, stories, and songs, if only we stop and listen. Alright, from one ghostly white creature to another, but this time we're trading smooth skin for shaggy coats. In Section 8, we'll wander into muskox territory, prehistoric-looking beasts that survived the Ice Age and are still roaming today. Okay, picture this. You're trudging across the frozen tundra, the wind cutting through your jacket like knives, and suddenly you see a dark, shaggy mound on the horizon. At first, it looks like a boulder. Then it moves. Slowly, the shape lifts its massive head, long curved horns catching the weak sunlight, and you realize you're staring at a muskox, a creature that looks like it stepped straight out of the Ice Age. And honestly, you wouldn't be wrong. Muskoxen are true relics of the Pleistocene era. They once roamed alongside woolly mammoths, saber-toothed cats, and giant ground sloths. Most of those vanished thousands of years ago, but muskoxen? They're still here, still standing their ground in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Let's start with their most obvious feature, the coat. And calling it a coat almost feels insulting, it's more like armor. Muskoxen have a two-layered fur system. On top, long shaggy guard hairs that can hang nearly 2 feet down, swaying like a curtain in the wind. Beneath that, a secret weapon, Kiviot. Now, Kiviot is not just fur, it's the holy grail of insulation. It's 8 times warmer than sheep's wool, soft as cashmere, and doesn't shrink in water. In fact, Kiviot is so prized that people collect it from shed patches in the wild and spin it into scarves and clothing worth hundreds of dollars. Muskoxen basically walk around wearing luxury outerwear 24/7. And that warmth is necessary, because these animals live in places where temperatures can plummet to minus 70 degrees Fahrenheit. That's not bundle up with a parka. Weather, that's why does the air hurt my face? Weather. Yet the muskox endures its wool-trapping heat so effectively that snow doesn't melt when it lands on their backs. Now, let's move down to the head. Both males and females sport those heavy, curved horns. They look intimidating for a reason. They're weapons, status symbols, and survival tools all in one. During the rutting season in late summer, males compete for dominance by charging at each other full speed. Imagine 2 800-pound animals colliding head-on with the force of a car crash. The sound echoes across the tundra. And yet, thanks to thick skulls and reinforced horn bases, they rarely kill each other in these contests. It's like nature built them with built-in helmets. Muskoxen also have one of the most fascinating defense strategies in the Arctic. When predators like wolves threaten them, the herd forms a circle or a line, calves tucked safely in the middle, adults facing outward with horns ready. It's basically a living fortress. A wolf charging at that wall of horns is like running full tilt at a barbed fence. Most of them think twice. And if one does get too bold? Well, let's just say muskox horns aren't just for show. Diet-wise, muskoxen are true tundra foragers. They eat grasses, mosses, lichens, anything they can scrape up from under the snow. Their hooves are sharp and their sense of smell keen, they can detect vegetation buried beneath ice and dig it out with surprising efficiency. They're not picky, they can't afford to be, but they are persistent. And despite their rugged looks, musk oxen aren't loners. They're social animals, usually living in herds of 10 to 20, though in the summer, groups can swell to over 100. Within the herd, bonds are strong, and they rely on each other for warmth, protection, and guidance. Now, culturally speaking, musk oxen have deep significance for indigenous peoples of the Arctic. For centuries, they've been hunted for food, hides, and horns. Kvyat, as I mentioned earlier, is especially valuable, not just in modern textile markets but historically as a material for warm clothing in a place where staying warm literally meant staying alive. But muskoxen's history isn't all smooth. By the late 19th century, hunting had nearly wiped them out in Alaska and other parts of their range. They were gone from entire regions where they once thrived. Thankfully, conservation efforts in the 20th century reintroduced them to areas like Alaska, where today you can once again see these woolly relics grazing against snowy backdrops. It's one of those rare success stories where a species gets a second chance. Here's something quirky: musk oxen aren't actually oxen at all. Despite the name, they're more closely related to goats and sheep. Think of them as oversized mountain goats that decided to bulk up and take on the tundra. Their scientific name, Ovibos moschatus, literally means musky sheep ox, named for the strong odor males give off during rutting season. Not the most flattering label, but hey, it stuck. And I can't leave out their personality. People who've observed them up close describe musk oxen as a mix of stubborn and majestic. They'll stand their ground against predators and humans alike, sometimes holding their defensive formation long after the threat has passed, as if to say, "We'll decide when it's safe, thank you very much." There's something admirable about that kind of patience and resilience. But like many Arctic animals, musk oxen are feeling the pressure of climate change. Warming temperatures are altering the tundra's vegetation, and rain-on-snow events, where rain falls and then freezes into ice sheets, make it impossible for them to dig down to food. Predators like grizzly bears, moving further north due to warming, are also increasingly preying on muskox calves. They're tough, but the challenges ahead are real. Still, musk oxen remain living symbols of endurance. Standing in front of one feels like standing in front of history itself, like you've just been handed a glimpse of a world that vanished 10,000 years ago. So next time you hear the wind howling and imagine the Arctic wilderness, picture the muskox, shaggy, stoic, and stubbornly clinging to survival in the very land that shaped them. Alright, we've seen the ghosts of the Ice Age. Next, in Section 9, we'll look at one of the Arctic's cleverest opportunists, the Arctic fox, master of camouflage and survival tricks. You might be thinking, wait, I thought we already talked about Arctic foxes. True, we did cover them back in Section 3, but here's the thing, Arctic foxes are like that friend who keeps revealing new tricks every time you hang out. There's always more to learn, and their story is too fascinating to cover in just one sitting. Let's start with their size. They're small, about the size of a house cat, but every inch of them is designed for survival. Their rounded bodies, short legs, and tiny ears aren't just adorable. They conserve heat in a place where the thermometer can plummet to -70 degrees Fahrenheit. And their bushy tails? Think of them as personal blankets. When a blizzard hits, an Arctic fox curls up, tail over its nose, and practically disappears into the snow. That tail isn't just fluff, it's a survival tool. One of the fox's greatest talents is hunting. They're not huge or fast like wolves, but they make up for it with cunning. They primarily hunt lemmings, which themselves have a fascinating population cycle, boom and bust every few years. The fox adapts to these cycles, having larger litters when food is abundant and conserving energy when it's scarce. They can catch lemmings hidden under a thick layer of snow by listening for the faintest squeaks and sounds, then performing that iconic pounce you've probably seen in nature videos, launching straight into the snow to pin down dinner. But Arctic foxes don't rely solely on hunting. They're opportunists in the truest sense. They follow polar bears, scavenging leftovers from seal kills. They can even dig into frozen carcasses when nothing else is available. Their survival strategy is simple: use everything available and adapt fast. That's what has allowed them to thrive for thousands of years in a place that's unforgiving for most species. Now, their fur deserves a second spotlight. It's not just white in winter and brown in summer, it's incredibly dense and multi-layered. Beneath the outer fur is a thick undercoat of soft, insulating hair. This keeps them warm in temperatures that would freeze most other animals solid. And the seasonal color change? That's a masterstroke of camouflage. In winter, they vanish into the snow. In summer, they blend seamlessly with tundra rocks and soil. Predators and prey alike see a ghost or a shadow, depending on the season. Speaking of predators, Arctic foxes are surprisingly bold. They're prey for wolves, polar bears, and even golden eagles, yet they hold their own by being smart and elusive. When threatened, they can freeze in place, disappear against the snow, or dart into a cleverly hidden den. Their dens are something else too, sometimes over 100 feet long with multiple entrances, tunnels, and chambers. Some dens are so old, generations of foxes have reused them for centuries. Think of it as a sprawling underground fortress, perfectly suited for raising kits safely. Let's talk reproduction, because this is where Arctic foxes' adaptability shines even more. They can have large litters, sometimes up to 14 kits if the food supply is good. Both parents participate in raising the young. The father will hunt and bring back food while the mother stays in the den, nursing and protecting the kits. It's teamwork in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Here's a fascinating ecological twist: Arctic foxes are a key species in the Arctic ecosystem. By controlling lemming populations, they indirectly influence vegetation growth and the survival of other predators. In some years, when lemmings are abundant, foxes reproduce massively, which in turn affects the population cycles of snowy owls and other animals. They might be small, but their impact is massive. Another quirky trait: Arctic foxes can store food for later use. They cache surplus prey in the ground or snow, creating little frozen pantries. Some of these caches are revisited weeks or even months later. It's nature's version of meal prep, and it can literally mean the difference between life and death in a harsh winter. And let's not forget their social behavior. While not as gregarious as some Arctic mammals, foxes are playful and curious. Kits engage in wrestling matches that help them practice hunting and survival skills. Adult foxes are also known to playfully chase each other or even interact with humans cautiously when in less remote areas. Their personality is surprisingly charming, given the harshness of their environment. Finally, climate change adds a modern twist to their story. Red foxes are increasingly moving north into Arctic fox territory. Larger and more aggressive, red foxes compete for food and sometimes kill Arctic foxes. This adds a new layer of challenge for these small, resilient survivors. Yet despite this pressure, Arctic foxes continue to endure, adapt, and find ways to thrive. So, even though we've already introduced them, Arctic foxes deserve another look. They are masters of stealth, cunning, and resilience, a small, white ghost navigating one of the harshest places on Earth with brilliance and style. Every snowflake in their world tells a story of survival, and the Arctic fox has learned to write those stories better than most. Next up, in Section 10, we'll shift from land to sea and meet a creature with flippers, whiskers, and an unmistakable sense of charm: the bearded seal, another Arctic marvel. Imagine the Arctic Ocean, endless sheets of ice, water glinting under pale sunlight, and silence so profound it almost feels alive. Then, breaking that silence, a curious face appears at the edge of a hole in the ice: a pair of dark eyes, a bulbous nose, and long, stiff whiskers that twitch like antennae. That's a bearded seal, and trust me, those whiskers aren't just for show. Bearded seals, named for their remarkable facial whiskers, called vibrissae, are among the largest and most abundant of the northern Phocid seals. Adult males can weigh up to 660 pounds, while females can reach 550 pounds. Their bodies are streamlined for life in water, yet bulky enough to insulate against the Arctic chill. That thick layer of blubber keeps them warm, floating through icy waters as if they were born in thermal suits. Those whiskers? They're highly sensitive, detecting vibrations and movements in the water. When hunting under dark or murky ice, bearded seals sweep the ocean floor with their whiskers to locate shrimp, squid, fish, and other invertebrates. In other words, they feel their prey before striking, almost like nature's version of sonar with a personal touch. Bearded seals are expert divers, capable of plunging over 1,500 feet deep and holding their breath for up to 20 minutes. Yet they're equally at home lounging near ice edges or hauling themselves onto floating ice sheets to rest. Their lives are a delicate balance between exploring the ocean's depths and keeping safe from predators like polar bears and killer whales. And their social behavior is fascinating. Male bearded seals are known for their songs, low-frequency calls that rumble across ice-covered waters. These songs serve multiple purposes, attracting females during breeding season and establishing territory among rival males. Imagine the Arctic as a vast concert hall, with deep, rolling bass tones echoing beneath frozen waves. These vocalizations are so powerful that they can travel miles underwater, a truly epic form of communication. When it comes to reproduction, bearded seals have adapted brilliantly to their icy world. Females give birth on small ice floes during the spring. Pups are born with a soft, silvery fur called lanugo, which keeps them warm until their blubber develops. Mothers are fiercely protective, nursing pups for about 6 to 8 weeks before the little ones venture into the water on their own. Survival in these conditions is no small feat, yet bearded seals have mastered the art of raising young in a frozen kingdom. Culturally, bearded seals are vital to indigenous Arctic communities. For centuries, Inuit hunters have relied on these seals for food, clothing, and tools. The blubber provides oil for lamps, skins become clothing and shelter, and bones are used for crafting implements. In this way, bearded seals are not just ocean dwellers, they are integral to human survival in one of the harshest regions on Earth. Here's a quirky fact: despite their size and apparent clumsiness on land, bearded seals are surprisingly agile in the water. They can twist, flip, and dart with precision, making them elusive prey for polar bears and walruses. Their combination of bulk and grace is a remarkable evolutionary adaptation, perfectly suited to the icy labyrinth of their home. But life isn't without challenges. Climate change is rapidly altering the Arctic landscape. Sea ice, crucial for resting, breeding, and raising pups, is disappearing faster than ever. Changes in ice cover also affect the distribution of fish and invertebrates that bearded seals rely on for food. And with human activity increasing, shipping lanes, oil exploration, and fishing, these seals face pressures their ancestors never did. Still, there's something almost magical about watching a bearded seal in its natural habitat. They poke their heads above the ice, twitching their whiskers, singing underwater, and disappearing as effortlessly as they came. They embody resilience, adaptability, and a touch of playful curiosity, a reminder that even in one of the harshest environments on Earth, life not only survives but thrives. And for anyone who loves quirky animal behavior, bearded seals are known to applaud in water. Researchers have observed them slapping the ice or water with their flippers during social interactions, almost like a playful gesture among themselves. It's these little personality traits that make studying them endlessly fascinating. So, the next time you picture the Arctic, don't just think of towering polar bears or migrating caribou. Picture a whiskered seal, navigating under ice, singing to its neighbors, teaching us a lesson in resilience and adaptability with every breath. Alright, from the water's edge to the icy skies, Section 11 will take us to the largest flying bird in the Arctic, the gyrfalcon, a predator of unparalleled speed and elegance. Close your eyes and imagine this: the Arctic tundra stretching endlessly, wind sweeping across rocky cliffs, and the sun low on the horizon. Suddenly, a shadow flashes across the sky, a streamlined silhouette, wings cutting the air like knives. This is no ordinary bird. This is the gyrfalcon, the largest falcon in the world, and a master of the Arctic skies. Gyrfalcons are impressive in size. Adult males weigh about 1.2 to 2.0 kilograms, 2.6 to 4.4 pounds, while females are much larger, often 1.8 to 4.2 kilograms, 4 to 9 pounds. With wingspans reaching up to 1.2 meters, almost 4 feet, they are built for both endurance and explosive speed. Unlike other birds of prey, gerfalcons can chase prey across the tundra or dive from great heights in a maneuver called a stoop, reaching astonishing speeds to snatch birds or mammals unaware. One of the most fascinating things about gerfalcons is their adaptability in hunting. They feed on birds like ptarmigan and waterfowl, but they'll also take small mammals, including lemmings and Arctic hares. Their hunting strategy is a combination of patience, precision, and sheer power. They can soar high to survey the landscape, then suddenly dive with pinpoint accuracy. Watching a gerfalcon strike is like watching nature's ultimate sniper in action, silent, lethal, and mesmerizing. Coloration in gerfalcons varies, which is another way they thrive in the Arctic. Some are dark gray or nearly black, while others are white or pale, blending seamlessly with the snow. This polymorphism isn't just for show, it helps them camouflage in different environments, from rocky cliffs to snowy plains, making them both efficient hunters and elusive targets themselves. Nesting is another area where gerfalcons impress. Unlike many birds, they don't build nests in trees. They prefer cliff ledges, rocky outcrops, and even abandoned nests of other raptors. Females lay 3 to 4 eggs in spring, and both parents are involved in raising the young. The female primarily incubates while the male hunts, but he also protects the nest aggressively. These birds are fiercely territorial and will defend their nesting area with remarkable courage, sometimes attacking humans or other predators that venture too close. Culturally, gerfalcons have been revered for centuries. In medieval Europe, they were highly prized by royalty for falconry. Kings and queens would pay fortunes for these birds, valuing their speed, loyalty, and hunting skill. In fact, owning a gerfalcon was a status symbol, often reserved for monarchs alone. In many ways, they were considered the emperors of the falcon world, commanding respect both in the skies and in human society. And here's a fun ecological twist. Gerfalcon populations are closely tied to the cycles of their prey, especially ptarmigan. When ptarmigan numbers boom, gerfalcons have plenty of food and raise more chicks. When the prey population crashes, falcon numbers follow suit. It's a delicate dance, and one that showcases the deep interconnections in Arctic ecosystems. Despite their toughness, gerfalcons face modern threats. Climate change is shifting habitats, affecting both prey availability and the delicate balance of their tundra homes. Human activity, such as development and pollution, adds further pressure. Yet gerfalcons remain resilient, continuing to dominate the skies of the Arctic year after year. One of the most awe-inspiring aspects of gerfalcons is their sheer audacity. They have been observed hunting prey heavier than themselves, including adult ptarmigan and even other raptors. Their strength, speed, and intelligence combine to make them apex predators in their environment. Watching one swoop over the tundra is like watching poetry in motion, every wing beat precise, every dive calculated. And here's a small, fun fact. Some gerfalcons will mimic the calls of their prey to lure them closer, a clever hunting trick that shows just how intelligent these birds are. They're not just flying killing machines, they're strategists, problem solvers, and masters of Arctic survival. So, as we look up to the Arctic sky and see a shadow gliding effortlessly across the wind, remember the gerfalcon, a predator that embodies power, grace, and resilience. It's a bird that commands the Arctic skies, reminding us that even in the harshest environments, life thrives in both beauty and strength. Next up, in Section 12, we'll take a deep dive into the icy waters again to meet the narwhal's lesser-known cousin, the beluga whale, and explore some of its unique social behaviors and intelligence. Imagine gliding silently through icy Arctic waters. The ocean is vast, quiet, and shimmering with fragments of ice. Then, a sudden burst of sound fills the water, clicks, whistles, and squeals echoing in all directions. You look up and see a group of smooth, white shapes weaving through the water with astonishing coordination. These are beluga whales, social geniuses and one of the most communicative species in the ocean. Belugas aren't just talkative, they have some of the most complex vocalizations of any whale species. Each individual has a unique signature whistle, almost like a name. They use these calls to identify each other, coordinate movements, and maintain contact in the often murky, icy waters where visibility is low. Imagine a whole pod communicating constantly, even when separated by hundreds of meters. It's a social network built entirely underwater. Their social structure is equally fascinating. Belugas travel in pods that vary in size, from a handful of individuals to hundreds. Within these pods, relationships are complex. Some individuals form lifelong bonds, others cooperate temporarily for hunting or protection. Mothers are highly protective of their calves, often using coordinated behaviors to shield them from predators. But belugas are playful too. They engage in games, chase each other, and even interact with other species in what seems like curiosity-driven behavior rather than survival-driven. And speaking of intelligence, belugas are often compared to dolphins for their problem-solving abilities. They can mimic sounds, understand commands in captivity, when studied ethically, and demonstrate problem-solving skills that show a capacity for abstract thought. Researchers have even noted instances of them cooperating to herd fish or manipulate objects in the environment. These are whales that can strategize, remember, and adapt in real time, a true mark of cognitive sophistication. Belugas also have remarkable memory and navigational abilities. They can recognize individual humans or other animals they've interacted with, even after years of separation. In the wild, they navigate vast expanses of ice-covered seas, sometimes returning to the same estuaries year after year to breed or feed. Their sonar and vocalizations allow them to map their environment, almost like living underwater GPS systems. Culturally, belugas have played an important role for Arctic indigenous communities. Their behaviors and seasonal movements are deeply intertwined with human survival. Indigenous hunters often follow the migrations of belugas, understanding their communication patterns and timing. They've observed subtle cues in whale songs and pod behavior that indicate shifts in prey availability or environmental conditions. These whales are not just part of the ecosystem, they're teachers, providing humans with knowledge about the health and rhythms of the Arctic. Here's a quirky and endearing fact: belugas are known to engage in what scientists call synchronous swimming. Pods will move together in perfect harmony, sometimes surfacing side by side or diving in unison. It's thought this behavior strengthens social bonds and helps coordinate hunting. Watching a pod move in perfect unison is like witnessing a choreographed underwater ballet, graceful, coordinated, and utterly mesmerizing. Belugas are also highly playful with humans when given the chance. In areas where interaction occurs, wild belugas have been observed approaching boats, nudging equipment, or even letting humans touch them gently. This curiosity is rare among whales and demonstrates their advanced social intelligence. They are not just reacting, they are interacting intentionally. But belugas face challenges in today's rapidly changing Arctic. Melting sea ice, increased shipping traffic, and industrial noise threaten their communication networks. Since so much of their life depends on sound, noise pollution can interfere with feeding, mating, and social cohesion. Yet, these intelligent whales continue to adapt, altering their vocal patterns, migrating along new routes, and maintaining complex social networks despite disruptions. And here's a fun fact you might not expect: belugas have been observed babysitting behaviors, where adult whales, sometimes unrelated to the calf, watch over and protect young whales. It's a behavior reminiscent of human communal childcare, another testament to their social sophistication. Belugas remind us that the Arctic is not just a frozen wasteland, it's a dynamic, social, and intelligent world. These whales are problem solvers, communicators, and playful explorers, thriving in a harsh environment through cooperation, intelligence, and adaptability. Observing them offers a glimpse into the intelligence and personality that exists beneath the ice, often hidden from casual human view. So next time you imagine the Arctic Ocean, picture it alive with communication, a chorus of clicks and whistles, pods weaving through icy channels, mothers teaching their young, and playful interactions reminding us that intelligence comes in many forms, even in the freezing, seemingly desolate waters of the far north. Alright, from these social sea dwellers, Section 13 will take us to one of the Arctic's most iconic and powerful predators, the polar bear, master of the ice and king of the Arctic. Imagine standing on a vast, frozen expanse of the Arctic, ice stretching endlessly to the horizon. Then, from a distance, a massive shape moves slowly but deliberately. White fur blends seamlessly with the snow, eyes scanning the horizon, nose twitching to pick up scent. This is no ordinary bear, it's a polar bear, apex predator of the Arctic, perfectly built for survival in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Polar bears are the largest land carnivores alive today. Adult males, called boars, can weigh up to 1,500 pounds, while females, or sows, are smaller, usually around 550 to 700 pounds. Their size is more than impressive, it's an evolutionary tool. Large bodies conserve heat, and powerful limbs allow them to traverse ice and swim vast distances. Polar bears are built for stamina as much as strength. They can swim over 60 miles without stopping and cover dozens of miles on ice in search of seals. Speaking of seals, they are the polar bear's primary food source. These predators rely heavily on ringed and bearded seals, stalking them at breathing holes or breaking into dens. Polar bears are patient hunters, often waiting for hours by a hole in the ice, barely moving a muscle, until a seal surfaces for air. Their sense of smell is extraordinary. They can detect a seal nearly a mile away and under 3 feet of snow. Think of it as a built-in radar for survival. Polar bears are also intelligent problem solvers. In addition to traditional hunting methods, they've been observed using creative strategies like waiting near ice floes to ambush prey, breaking through snow-covered seal dens, or even cooperating with cubs to capture larger prey. This mix of strength, patience, and cunning makes them apex predators without natural competition, except humans and changing ice conditions. Their fur is another marvel. Polar bear fur isn't actually white, it's translucent. Each hollow hair reflects light, making the bear blend into its snowy environment perfectly. Beneath that fur is a thick layer of fat, sometimes up to 4.5 inches thick, insulating the bear against freezing temperatures. It's a system so efficient that polar bears can survive in conditions that would kill most mammals. Polar bears are surprisingly good swimmers, an adaptation that allows them to hunt across ice gaps and open water. They use their large front paws to paddle, acting like natural oars, while their back legs steer. Cubs learn to swim within weeks of birth, often guided by their mothers across icy channels. This swimming skill isn't just for hunting, it's critical for survival as sea ice patterns shift with climate change. Culturally, polar bears have long held a place in human imagination and indigenous traditions. Inuit peoples have stories and legends centered on polar bears, respecting them as powerful beings that embody strength, intelligence, and resilience. These stories often portray bears as teachers, guardians, or symbols of endurance in the frozen north. And yes, polar bears are playful too. Despite their size and reputation, they often engage in mock fights, sliding on ice, or rolling in the snow. This playfulness is important for cubs, helping them develop hunting and social skills while building muscle and coordination. Even adults, when food is abundant, will indulge in seemingly playful antics. But the polar bear's world is changing fast. Climate change is shrinking sea ice, making hunting more difficult and forcing bears to swim longer distances. Reduced ice cover leads to longer fasting periods, declining body condition, and even increased conflicts with humans as bears search for food near settlements. Conservationists warn that without urgent action, polar bears could face serious population declines. Yet polar bears continue to inspire all. Standing next to one, imagining its raw strength, intelligence, and adaptability, you realize that this isn't just a predator, it's a symbol of resilience in a fragile ecosystem. Every stride across the ice, every calculated hunt, every maternal lesson to cubs is a testament to evolution at its peak. Fun fact: polar bears can run up to 25 miles per hour on ice and leap over 6 feet, despite their massive size. That's like a heavyweight athlete in a fur coat, sprinting across frozen arenas and conquering one of the most extreme landscapes on Earth. So, as we picture the Arctic landscape, think of the polar bear, the ultimate survivor, apex predator, and ruler of the ice. Its life is a story of adaptation, intelligence, and raw power, a living emblem of the Arctic's beauty and brutality. Next up, in Section 14, We'll shift from apex predators to the Arctic's underwater engineers, the walruses, known for their social behavior, tusks, and fascinating survival strategies. Picture the Arctic coastline, ice floes drifting in the cold water, the distant calls of seabirds echoing, and a low, guttural roar breaking the silence. As you look closer, enormous shapes heave themselves onto the ice, some weighing over 3,700 pounds. Long tusks glint in the weak sun. These are walruses, the social giants of the Arctic, and they are as impressive in personality as they are in size. Walruses are unmistakable. Their long ivory tusks, which can grow up to 3 feet, are used for multiple purposes, hauling their massive bodies onto ice, establishing dominance in social groups, and even as defensive weapons against predators like polar bears or orcas. But tusks aren't just tools, they're symbols of status. In male groups, the size and length of tusks often dictate dominance, influencing mating opportunities. Underneath that tough exterior, walruses have thick skin and a layer of blubber sometimes up to 6 inches thick, which keeps them warm in frigid waters. Their flippers allow them to swim with surprising agility, moving gracefully through water despite their bulk. On land or ice, they may appear clumsy, but in the water, they are capable divers, reaching depths of over 300 feet to hunt for clams, mollusks, and other bottom-dwelling prey. Their whiskers, called vibrissae, are extraordinary sensory tools. Walruses use these stiff, highly sensitive hairs to detect prey buried in the sand on the ocean floor. Even in murky, icy water, they can feel the smallest movements of clams and mussels. Some researchers have likened these whiskers to natural underwater metal detectors, finely tuned over millennia of evolution. Walruses are also intensely social animals. Herds can range from a few individuals to thousands, and their social behaviors are complex. They pile together on ice floes for warmth, protection, and interaction. Young males, called bulls, often form bachelor groups, while older males lead harems during mating season. These herds are loud, dynamic, and sometimes chaotic, a cacophony of bellows, grunts, and barks that echo across the ice. Reproduction in walruses is fascinating. Females usually give birth to a single calf after an 15 to 16-month gestation period, often on ice floes or beaches. Mothers are fiercely protective, nursing calves for up to 2 years, teaching them swimming, diving, and social behaviors. In this icy nursery, calves quickly learn the skills they'll need to survive in a harsh, predator-filled environment. Walruses also play an important ecological role. By digging for mollusks on the seafloor, they stir up sediments, which benefits other marine species and helps recycle nutrients. They are essentially ecosystem engineers, large, slow-moving, and yet integral to the Arctic marine environment. Culturally, walruses have been essential to indigenous Arctic communities for thousands of years. People have relied on them for meat, tusks, and hides. Their ivory tusks were used to craft tools, art, and trade items, while blubber provided oil for lamps and heat. The walrus is a symbol of abundance, endurance, and interconnectedness between humans and the Arctic ecosystem. Despite their size and power, walruses face significant modern threats. Climate change is shrinking the sea ice platforms they rely on for resting and berthing. Human activity, including shipping and oil exploration, disrupts habitats and increases stress levels. And with changing ice patterns, walruses are forced to haul out on land in massive numbers, sometimes leading to stampedes that can injure or kill calves. Yet, walruses remain iconic. There's a strange grace to them, the combination of massive bulk, impressive tusks, and surprisingly gentle social behaviors. Watching a herd move across ice, communicating with low barks and grunts, is like observing a living, breathing Arctic symphony. Each individual plays a role, whether it's teaching, protecting, or navigating the frozen seas. And here's a fun, almost whimsical fact: walruses can produce a water dance, of synchronized splashing, often observed when herds are excited or threatened. It's noisy, dramatic, and a reminder that these giants are not just survivors, they're performers in their icy theater. Walruses are a living reminder of the Arctic's harsh beauty, large, social, and exquisitely adapted to a fragile ecosystem. Their lives are a combination of endurance, intelligence, and social complexity, and they exemplify the remarkable ways life thrives in extreme conditions. Next, in section 15, we'll conclude our Arctic journey with the snowy owl, a silent, majestic predator of the tundra skies, wrapping up this exploration of the Arctic's most fascinating animals. Picture the Arctic tundra under a low, pale sun. Snow stretches endlessly, broken only by rocky outcrops and frozen lakes. Then, without warning, a ghostly figure appears, gliding silently across the wind. White feathers, striking yellow eyes, and an aura of quiet power, the snowy owl has arrived. Snowy owls are among the largest owls in the world, with wingspans reaching up to 5 feet. Despite their size, they fly with near-perfect silence. Specialized feather structures dampen the sound of air passing over their wings, allowing them to approach prey undetected. This stealth is crucial, especially when hunting lemmings, Arctic hares, and other small mammals that are adept at hiding under snow and rocks. Their white plumage is more than just a striking feature, it's camouflage. Blending seamlessly with snow and ice, snowy owls can perch or hover without easily being detected by either predators or prey. Interestingly, their coloration can vary. Some owls are almost pure white, while others have darker markings. These patterns often correlate with age and sex, adding layers to their already fascinating biology. Snowy owls are highly adaptive hunters. They rely on acute eyesight and hearing to detect movement under the snow. During the long Arctic winter, when darkness dominates much of the day, they use these senses to navigate and find food efficiently. This ability makes them apex predators of the tundra ecosystem. One of the most fascinating behaviors of snowy owls is their nomadic lifestyle. Unlike many birds, they don't migrate on a fixed schedule. Instead, they follow prey availability. In years when lemmings are abundant, snowy owls may breed in larger numbers. In lean years, they wander southward, sometimes as far as the northern United States or even southern Canada, in search of food. This boom and bust migration is a remarkable adaptation to an unpredictable environment. Snowy owls are also fiercely protective parents. Females lay up to 11 eggs in a season, depending on food availability. Both parents participate in raising the young, though the female does most of the incubation. Chicks grow rapidly, learning to fly and hunt in a matter of weeks, a crucial skill in a harsh environment where survival depends on speed, skill, and intelligence. Culturally, snowy owls have captured human imagination for centuries. From Inuit legends to modern literature, they are symbols of wisdom, mystery, and endurance. Their silent flight and piercing gaze evoke awe, and their presence in the Arctic landscape is almost mythic, a living reminder of the tundra's quiet power. Snowy owls also have surprising adaptability. While they are specialized hunters of small mammals, they can switch to birds when necessary. They have been observed capturing ducks, geese, and other birds during seasonal migrations, demonstrating remarkable hunting versatility. This adaptability is key to surviving in one of the most extreme environments on Earth. Another fascinating trait is their intelligence. Snowy owls are highly observant, learning from their environment and adjusting hunting strategies based on prey behavior. Some studies suggest they can even recognize human patterns, avoiding areas with higher human activity or using wind and terrain to their advantage when stalking prey. Despite their resilience, snowy owls face challenges. Climate change alters prey cycles, snow coverage, and breeding grounds. Human activity, such as habitat disruption and climate-induced shifts in prey availability, adds further pressure. Yet snowy owls continue to adapt, navigating these challenges with the same precision and grace that has allowed their species to thrive for millennia. Watching a snowy owl hunt is like witnessing a ghost in motion, silent, deliberate, and breathtakingly efficient. Every swoop, every turn, every calculated strike speaks to millions of years of evolution, perfectly honed to survive and thrive in the Arctic. As our journey through the Arctic comes to a close, think of all the creatures we've met, from the playful belugas and cunning Arctic foxes to the majestic gerfalcons, polar bears, walruses, and finally, the silent snowy owl. Each species is a testament to adaptation, resilience, and the incredible diversity of life in one of Earth's harshest environments. The Arctic is more than ice and snow, it's a vibrant world full of stories, strategies, and survival. And these 15 animals? They are its unforgettable stars, each one teaching us lessons about ingenuity, endurance, and the beauty of life thriving against the odds.